Hello and welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charnley. This is another historic church in Leicestershire. This is the church of St Michael, Wartnaby. And like the nearby church at Grimston, this belonged to the Knights Templar before passing to the Hospitallers when the Templar were dissolved. Indeed, of course, what happened in England largely was that the knights themselves were transferred as well, because the English king felt, among other things, that if the French king is accusing the Templars of heresy, there's got to be something wrong, because he's the king of France, and the French are our historic enemies. But this is largely a 12th century building with later alterations, late 12th century, so it's not as heavy as the early 12th century would be, and altered at 13th, 14th century. The chancel is basically Victorian, certainly as we see it today. There are some remains of wall paintings, although again, someone has got it in their head that it would be a good idea to take all the wall plaster off in the nave, destroying, of course, most of the wall paintings. But there we go. Well, let's have a look around and see what we can see. And so, as usual, we start at the west end, which here there's no tower, there's a little bell turret, however. You can see here we've got a single nave on the south side. Over here is the Second World War Memorial, just 3 names, because in Britain, unlike in the United States, of course, the First World War is the war we lose the most people. That's the war where you've got the trenches, etc. The United States only comes in the last year, and therefore its number of losses is far less. Also, in part, it's less because by this point the Allies have learned how to do warfare, and the Germans are losing. The font is a nice little tub-type thing, very good. Probably Norman, has been restored, but here we have the surviving wall painting. It's just patterns on the arches. You can see here on the underside of the arches we have these various largely floral patterns. Pictures and such like would have been on the wall plaster. That has been destroyed. The columns are more slender than you would have early in the 12th century. And it's all moving towards the same kind of style as the style that then comes in the early 13th century. And then you see the windows are all pointed. These are pointed lancets, probably original but enlarged, and of course restored, because that stonework is not medieval. Unusually here, I just had to finding the First World War Memorial. Again, there's only 3 names. This is because it's a tiny little parish. Pulpit, and you'll notice the choir stalls here are in the nave, again because it's a fairly small and shallow chancel. It's an eagle lectern, the eagle symbolic, of course, carrying the word of God swiftly and powerfully. Nice little organ there in the corner. Here we go for memorial to the Restoration, 1948 to 50, by the generosity of Lieutenant Colonel J.D. Player of Friarswell, Wartnaby, who was killed in action in the Middle East in 1943. Lieutenant Colonel is about the highest rank that you're going to be regularly in action and in danger. Friarswell is one of the big houses here. There's also Wartnaby Hall and a Wartnaby House. We have here memorials to, so make sure I got them in the right order, yes. Reverend James Bingham of this place, who departed this life November the 8th, 1818, aged 83 years. Memory of Elizabeth Bingham Copestake. Relics, that is, of course, widow of the Reverend James Bingham, who changed her name after his decease. She died January the 23rd, 1820, aged 85 years. And then their son, Reverend James Bingham Copestake, who died October 1826, aged 59 years. As is quite common in these little churches, there's just the one stained glass window. This is the east window of the crucifixion. Communion table uses Jacobean panelling, may actually be of that period. They did do altars like that, the Laudians. And here we have Reverend Thomas Bingham, Vicar of Kettleby and Rector of Norbury in Derbyshire. And he died at Bath, 1849, aged 84. His wife, Margaretta, died in 1838, aged 69, but she's still listed below him. Undoubtedly, the memorial's done after his death rather than after hers. But also, it's actually quite common to, even if they were, to put the wife on the bottom, just because of social status. And, of course, it's all to do with cultural convention. While the pews are Victorian, some bits of medieval benches survive. You can see this basically is a medieval bench that's been much shortened to make it into this little seat. You can see how worm-eaten it is, with the poppy ends and the poppy heads, and that's, of course, why they'd have been replaced. This one looks to be perhaps post-medieval with those things on the end, possibly 16th, 17th century. But again, much reduced in size. And although the roof is Victorian, I suspect, the roof line is 15th century. So that is the inside here at Wartnaby. It's a little church, but one of these little churches that is quite well proportioned, and you could just scale it up and it turns into a big church. Again, this point about clerestories there to let the light in. There are some people who think, and I went on a little bit about it in the last video, some people who think, oh, windows are only to look out of. Well, of course, medieval windows, they'd often have stained glass in them, so later medieval. Early on, they're these little things, and they're designed to let as much light in as possible without letting a huge amount of the weather in, because, of course, glass isn't a thing in the early Middle Ages, not in country churches like this. It's expensive, it's difficult to make, and of course it becomes easier, and we end up with the situation today where glass is normal. So that's the inside here at Wartnaby. So you can see outside. There is mowing going on out there, though. So here we are outside of Wartnaby. Yes, that is a lawnmower going in the background, so be careful about going around the outside. It's a gentleman on a ride on, mowing the churchyard. But you can see here the beauty of this building from this little chancel, which does appear to have certainly post-medieval elements to it, post-medieval elements as well. But most of this, it's obviously quite heavily restored because of that stonework. That it would have been quite run down. In fact, there's a photo there, well, there's an old drawing of it at Grimston that shows it quite run down, and it's been restored to its not quite pristine beauty, but it has been partially refaced. That it's a tower, it's a small tower kind of, but it has got these open bell arches, which is why I'm rather reluctant to call it a tower rather than a bell turret or something. But this is the best side of it actually, so we'll, because of the mowing and because of time constraints, this will be largely the limit of the outside imagery. I will have a little bit of a look around the back though, so let's go and do that. In fact, the mower appears to have gone around the back, so we'll have a little bit of a look at the front for a while. But it's a very interesting tower. I don't think I've seen another one like it. He's coming back, and you can see that window here in the chancel. That's very much 16th, 17th century, suggesting restoration at that date. We won't go around the tower because that's where the mowing's happening at the moment. You can see these big memorials in the churchyard. And again, all these lovely slate gravestones. And there's the old barn behind, which probably does have medieval origins, probably would have been a hospitaller barn. And again, the Knights, because although the Templars and the Hospitallers held the place, it wasn't a commandery, it wasn't a preceptory, it was a church that belonged to them, and they were supplied to the clergy, but they would not have, and they would have visited to make sure everything was all right, but they would not primarily, they would not have a base here. They would, however, have collected the tithes. So that is the outside here at Wartnaby, as far as we're going to look at it, because, as I say, the hazards of a ride-on mower.